today. Let's go ahead and get started. So, AccreditPath, we are aiming to provide compliance infrastructure for providers that the Workforce Pell was built for. What's really interesting about our product is we have 118 days. So who do we have working on addressing this problem and rapidly? We've got four folks on this project, combined 40 years of experience in higher ed and ed tech operations, particularly in startups, organizations that move fast. Three of us share pre-IPO to U experience. We've scaled ed tech companies at the enterprise level, and Dr. Douglas brings deep accreditation expertise as a former associate dean. So as I said, the clock is ticking. Workforce Pell is now law, yay. And for the first time ever, short-term training programs, programs that are roughly 150 to 599 clock hours are eligible for Pell Grant funding. The implementation of this program begins July 1st of this year, and that's a very short time away from today. 75,000 programs are eligible. This will ideally open up over 700,000 open skilled trade jobs. There is a huge demand. There is also funding, but there's no organizations connecting the gaps. They're not ready, the providers. So this is ultimately the core problem, our infrastructure gaps. The ultimate paradox here is that our Workforce Pell was designed for programs like community health worker training, phlebotomy certificates, doula programming, skilled trades, short, practical, changeable. What is in focus one year might be different in the next year as they are job connected and market connected. And the providers running these programs have largely never really touched Title IV programming. And when you look at what's actually missing, there are three infrastructure gaps standing between the providers and their eligibility. The first is student tracking. The Workforce Pell requires proof of at least 70% completion, 70% placement. That means we need to have a system in place that tracks student journeys through the program against accreditation requirements to make sure the students aren't getting taken advantage of, looking at who enrolled, who finished, and who got placed. Most community-based providers don't necessarily have a robust student information system, let alone one that provides consistently auditable data. The second gap here is accreditation visibility. There is no central hub where providers or states are able to see who's eligible, who's in process, who's in compliance. States are responsible for approving the programs, but they're working from really incomplete information. State governors have to calculate what's called the 70-70 test, and that gets back to the completion of the placement numbers. And half the states don't currently collect the data needed to do it. And the third gap here is financial aid infrastructure. There's no centralized system giving the federal government visibility into funding numbers, compliance metrics, or where those barriers might sit between the students and financial aid. Providers do need to build financial aid processing workflows from scratch for programs who have never been Pell eligible before. So moving up from accepting Venmo payments to working with federal compliance. So you have a federal program that's designed for community-based providers currently with compliance requirements that assume university-grade infrastructure. And the gap is really where AccreditPath will live. So what our current community providers have, they have training built for communities, not necessarily for compliance. They're tracking outcomes informally, perhaps not at all. Half of states, again, lack the outcome tracking infrastructure for these short-term programming. There is no national short-term outcome data source, and they have very minimal Title IV expertise because, frankly, they've never needed it. Without compliance infrastructure, Workforce Pell is primarily going to benefit institutions that already have access, not the communities it was designed to serve. That's largely the problem that we're looking to tackle. And so the solution here is AccreditPath. Again, we're a compliance platform that helps workforce training organizations assess and achieve workforce Pell readiness. Today, providers have three options. They can either hire really expensive consultants at 15 to about 50K. They can try navigating federal systems alone, or they might not apply. And so AccreditPath replaces all three of those areas. Community-based workforce training organizations are really good at what they do. They're really integrated into the communities where they're located. They transform lives through hands-on skills training, but have never had to navigate federal compliance infrastructure before. Again, think like doula certification programs, trades trainers, community health workers, culinary schools, similar providers. They're typically small to mid-sized, under-resourced on the administrative side. Again, very trusted by the communities that they serve, and they can get access to Pell that can be transformative if they can figure out what it requires. And I think compliance isn't always sexy, but I think what's really interesting about AccreditPath is this will be a provider-owned cooperative, so it will allow providers to not only own their data, but receive dividends on participation as well, which does increase the likelihood of maintaining compliance. It's instituting a full ownership mentality. How it works, I realize I've got 1 minute left, so I'm going to go through the how it works relatively briefly. We do program intake, and a fair amount of this will be done automated. We will have folks on the back end, at least initially, ensuring compliance standards, but the goal will be to have this as automated as possible. Ultimately, making sure that private data stays private and compliant data stays compliant. Again, here's more information on what we're building. I do have some more mock-ups here shortly. The initial test vertical we would like to work with, again, are doula. And the reason that we selected doula, there's a couple of states here that we can work within. Um, Bummer. I'm very long-winded. And judges, if you would like more information, there is a judge's handout. And here is the deck for additional information.
Awesome. Maybe just to flesh out my understanding here, I'd love if you could go into the high level on the workforce Pell system and um, how it's changing with this regulatory change in the next 180 days.
Yeah, absolutely. So historically, the Pell Grants were largely geared towards more bachelor's, associates, I'm sorry, not master's, but bachelor's and associates programs. These changes ultimately take a significant amount of funding and put them towards more can't speak today, skills-focused trade programs. And it's a very big change right now in higher education. I'm in a lot of higher ed conversations, and folks are kind of in this cycle of, I don't know, what do we do? I don't know, what do we do? Especially considering a lot of enrollment for some of their existing programming has already been hit pretty significantly. And so this helps to, there will be some providers who are ready to go, but this helps to bring a lot of those more community-based organizations into the fold and help them get up to speed with the bigger institutions that are ready now. Um,
Great. Thank you. Helpful.
yeah.
Did you have any?
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
go ahead.
Okay, I'm curious. There are a number of, problems you identified, like needs, and you have solutions for them. I'm curious which of them was the most challenging to address. It seems like some of them are fairly straightforward, like it's known how to account for it, you just have to build it. I'm curious what was one that was very challenging to design for.
Honestly, I've been working on this sort of concept for a few years now. Initially, it started out as simply a doula platform. And I had to put it on hold for quite some time because I just had a lot of concern with my ability to effectively ensure that the market we were trying to get into would be okay with us amassing a significant amount of data. And so this transition to having federal backing and using compliance tools readily available that are government and enterprise grade mitigates that risk entirely. And then giving ownership to the organizations help that as well. So I think the sort of TLDR is the gap was making sure that we're building a product for the community with the community's trust.
Mm-hmm.
I like your eyeball windows, Louisa.
Thanks for noticing.
Any other questions?
All right. Thank you so much.